like to reconvene then the Committee of the Whole.
I'd like to make a motion to reopen the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. And I will adjourn then the Committee of the Whole and move on to our full board. So our full board meeting here on September 4th. With Secretary, please call a roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Present.
Commissioner Menz.
Present.
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Rucker.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer. Absent. Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Vice President Abeni.
Here.
President Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. That action carries. I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. I'll take a motion then to approve the minutes from August 21st.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. So, reports of appointees to outside boards, commissions, and committees. Anybody have anything to report today? Not seeing any lights, then we will move on to the consent agenda. All those in favor of the consent agenda?
I'd like to move the consent
Thank you.
agenda as a slate.
That's right.
Second.
All right. And seeing no discussion or lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That action carries. And we have no items that are coming up from committees, so we are just blazing right through here, gang. So we will have our new business, which is the pay parking in the Minneapolis parks. Director Olson, I believe, is going to be presenting. Welcome.
Need my glasses. Good evening, Commissioners, President Forney. I am Annie Olson, Director of Visitor Services, and I'm here this evening to provide a brief overview of pay parking that operates out of our enterprise fund, the Minneapolis Parks. There have been a handful of questions that have come up over the past year or so, and I hope that this presentation, it's brief, but that it will address any of those questions that have arisen. Just want to give you a little history about pay parking in the Minneapolis parks. We have old files that have been held onto over the years and passed down from different staff, but the earliest indication of pay parking in the Minneapolis parks is at Parade Stadium at the parade lot that continues to exist between the Sculpture Garden and near the ball field and football or multi-use field. That was back in the 1950s. Since then, there have been some evolution. There was metered parking that went in on East River Parkway in the 1980s. And then a regional enterprise parking program began in 1995. Some of you may have visited parks back then in the 90s when there were boxes where you could slip your money in the slot for your space. And we've come a long way since then, and we've tried to keep up with kind of the modern best practices on how to operate pay parking areas. Back then, and this continues, we have some reasoning on why we have paid parking in particular areas. The first is to reduce congestion by having people make some choices on whether or not they're going to park in a particular area or for a particular amount of time, with the idea that providing pay parking encourages turnover in any given area. Also to encourage alternate modes of transportation. We work really closely with our friends at the City of Minneapolis, Metro Transit. There's a multi-modal task force that either I or my staff have been on for the past number of years, where we work together on figuring out kind of mobility hubs. So locations where we can turn over from parking to bus to other multimodal, whether it be bicycles or the shared mobility scooters and things of that nature that I've also come to this board with. Additionally, there is this idea that within the regional parks, our draw is not as much neighborhood folks who are driving there, but it is folks who are coming from outside of our city or kind of a regional draw. And this paying for parking does kind of bring in a little excess revenue kind of for those non-city residents, and in general, raising revenue within the enterprise fund. We have kind of a breakdown of our pay parking areas to regional and commercial. The regional areas are those that you'd think of right off the bat. They're broken into a series of chunks. The Central Riverfront, we have pay parking in the Mill Ruins area, at Boom Island, along West River Parkway, East River Parkway, Historic Main Street, and at Nicollet Island. We have pay parking at Lake Nokomis and Minnehaha Park within the Minnehaha Creek area. At the chain of lakes, we have pay parking at Bedema-Casca, Lake Harriet, and Cedar Lake. We have some pay parking at Theodore Wirth Park. And although not officially regional, it has a very regional draw, the Parade Sculpture Garden lot. So that original lot where we had started pay parking as a system. The commercial areas, it's kind of a crisscross here. Parade Sculpture Garden has some commuting that has a part of that. So anywhere that we see that there are commuters using our lots instead of park users, however the lots may be sitting open, we provide opportunities for those commuters in these commercial areas. So Parade Sculpture Garden, Bohemian Flats, East River Flats, the Lock and Dam lot that we had operated, which is currently closed due to the construction of the Stone Arch Bridge, and at Nicollet Island. So you can see there are a couple that move through, both regional and commercial, in our kind of segregation of the revenues. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. Our annual net revenue for the enterprise parking program is approximately $1.7 million. Those revenues are broken into three different kind of micro budgets out of the major parking budget. The regional parking that I just mentioned, so that's daily use of our regional park lots. Commercial parking are those kind of commuter areas, daily and contracted use of these commuter lots. So when we are issuing some type of contract or permit outside of our regional pay parking or parking permit, think school, the school permits, or we've had contract parking. We had that at that Lock and Dam lot as long as I have been doing this job. We also used to have it at the Fujiya lot, which is now our Waterworks building. And those were serving people who were not coming to visit the parks, but they were coming to park for work or for school. They were commuters that were coming into the city. Same at Bohemian Flats and East River Flats, serving many university students. And then we have event parking. So when the members of my use and event permit team permit a park for an event, and they use that parking lot, we actually take the revenue that comes in from the use of that lot for that event, and we put that into one of those three buckets we put in the event parking bucket. Everything rolls up to that $1.7 million, but that's kind of how we track it. So you'll see, this is kind of the breakdown of those buckets that I just mentioned. The bulk of our revenue is coming in through those regional lots, through that daily use of people that are visiting our regional parks. Then you can see the breakdown in the regional. So the most revenue comes in at Minnehaha Park. Then it kind of trickles the opposite direction. So Minnehaha and Nokomis bring in the most together. Then those riverfront areas that I broke out, the chain of lakes areas, also Wirth, and then the Parade Sculpture lot. That's the breakdown for regional. The other two small slices of the pie here are those commercial commuter lots, and then the event revenues when an event blocks out a parking lot. So what about the expenses? Well, currently we budget in enterprise parking for personnel, contractual services, and operating expenses. The personnel are 2 staff that are certified, so part of my salary as the Director of Visitor Services comes from the parking budget. All of the parking systems analyst salary comes from that budget as well. So that's the person that I have doing the day-to-day operating this program. We have a couple of special services attendant jobs. Those are seasonal positions. This year, one was filled by an intern who served us through the micromobility program all summer, and she did a great job documenting the scooter and bike parking and violations and working with our vendors and doing a lot of compliance checks. And then we have some trades that are coded back to enterprise parking, the cement shop, electrical shop, smaller amounts, but these folks are helping us with our installations and our machines, things of that nature. Then we have contractual services. In the contractual services bucket are the software and hardware that we utilize to operate these systems. Currently, we're using the same vendor that the city of Minneapolis uses. They're called Flowbird. They were once called Calais. And they are the providers of not just the pay boxes, but also the software that we use, all the back-end tracking software. And as a result of an RFP, we've also switched to their mobile payment app. Additionally, we have a maintenance vendor, Transpark. It's a local, a small business that has been providing us kind of day-to-day maintenance. So if a machine is broken, if there's something going on, they're the people that go out and report and do the troubleshooting on the machine. And it's a local small business through the TMP program here at the Park Board. The third bucket are our expenses are the operating expenses. The largest piece of that piece of the budget are credit card fees or cash management fees. But additionally, we have some equipment repairs, supplies, things of that nature, and then signage that get purchased or replaced out of those pieces of the budget. And in that expense budget, surprisingly, each of those three areas, personnel, contractual services, and operating expenses, are all pretty even in their amounts. They're somewhere around $230,000 each that we end up spending to operate this program. The expenses that are currently not captured in the enterprise parking budget are that of the day-to-day maintenance and then the construction and reconstruction. That sounded a lot like an alarm in my purse. Sorry about that. It may very well be, but I'm almost done. So that surface maintenance, patching, resurfacing, striping, even that winter maintenance, so plowing, right now none of that is being captured within the enterprise parking budget. That's all in the regional maintenance dollars. And then construction or reconstruction of a lot too. So we're talking about things that are part of planning projects, or if there's something that happens that, thanks Julie, that needs, I set a lot of alarms because I forget a lot of things. That we need to set aside in order to actually get the surface so we can make this program run. So how do we decide where we charge? Well, high demand areas with a regional draw are our number one. So you saw in that pie chart that that's where we're bringing in most of our revenue, in the regional areas. So Minnehaha Falls, Chain of Lakes, the beaches, Nokomis Beach, historic Main Street, Mill Ruins. We have done benchmarking, we have done research where other cities of our size, similar amenities, park systems that are similar to ours are charging in these areas as well. They're regional parks, they're beaches, they're big draws, right? Commuter areas like downtown, University, a historic Main Street where people are coming from other areas and parking down there. Enterprise sites where parking revenue supports the operation. So at Parade Sculpture Garden, that revenue kind of supports, part of that revenue supports the sculpture garden budget. We did some research on the top sculpture gardens in America, and all either charge an entrance fee or charge for parking. Well, we don't charge an entrance fee. We were on that list, but we do charge for parking. So we are fitting in with the best practice across the nation on that, on charging in that particular area. Areas where non-MPRB property is primarily commercial. So you think about people that are coming to our property to park, but they are going to all of these adjacent areas. We charge for parking in those. So we just are just about, I think it happened today, we installed the machines at the northwest corner of Badema-Casca, which was approved by the board in 2019 to make this installation, but we are finally in a position to be able to do that. There's a lot of development that's happening right adjacent to that parking. So these are opportunities where folks that are parking right in that upper corner are not necessarily coming to visit our lake. There are free areas just south of this area where we added parking. Right over here, that Plymouth and West River Parkway. It used to be a free 2-hour limit lot, but some other properties popped up right next door where people started sitting in that lot all day long. So, and to encourage turnover and to allow spaces for people who are visiting the park, we started to charge for parking in that lot. Those are some examples of where we're doing that. And then premium parking at locations where someone who can't or won't pay to park still can access that amenity because there are free options nearby. Examples of this: Lake Harriet at the band shell and the boat launch. We have pay parking, but there's free parking just a little bit further from those hot amenities, right? I can name those in most any park where we are charging for parking in the regional parks. Where we shouldn't charge, again, based on best practices, based on what we've researched throughout the country, other parks and other cities that are like us, and based on the philosophies that we have been writing on this entire time. We don't feel that we should charge at neighborhood parks. Neighborhood parks are tax supported, and they are most often used by people who live in the neighborhood, who are paying those taxes. Regional park areas that lack sufficient public transit, bike, or pedestrian access. So if there are areas where there's not really another way to get there, we're not necessarily going to charge to park. We have, like, North Mississippi Regional Park is landlocked. Mm-hmm. There's not a great way to get there other than driving. We're not going to charge people if there's no alternative. Parts of Theodore Wirth are that same way. Enterprise or athletic sites where parking fees would negatively impact operation or reservations. So the Parade Ice Arena, Northeast Ice Arena, Neiman, Boston, Northeast Athletic, the Premier Fields. I looked into parking at ice arenas as an option. There are 220 some odd ice arenas in the state of Minnesota, and there are 5 that charge for parking. Mariucci, Ritter Arena, those are both at the U. The XL Energy Center has pay parking that is a host to, obviously, the Minnesota Wild. At St. Cloud State, Herb Brooks Arena. And there's one more. They were all, oh gosh, now I can't think of the last one. Were all host to an NCAA hockey program or an NHL hockey program. So it made me feel like we were justified in matching that of the other arenas in the state. Same with athletic complexes. I'd looked into a lot of athletic complexes and I couldn't find any similar, like in the region, or actually I looked at the Ripken Experience and other places too, and I couldn't find any that were charging for parking. Areas where non-MPRB property is primarily residential. So think about all the parkways we have in the system and all those bump outs, right? I don't feel good about metering parking right in front of people's homes because that gives them not an option. I know that they're not going to park there overnight, but I mean, I park in front of my house to take the groceries out because I don't want to schlep them all the way up the stairs into the back. So I think that not charging in those areas is probably justified. So how do we decide the fee? Now we've decided where to charge. Here's how we decide the fee. We need to break even or better. So at minimum, we need to make enough where it's going to pay for the technology, the machine, the enforcement, whatever it might be. Right now, we have $1 an hour as the lowest current rate that we have that we are using, and $2.50 an hour at the highest current rate that we are using. We have a really nice menu of rates that the board has approved as part of the budget process that we are able to put into place as we watch trends change. So actually, Dan, the parking systems analyst, was out at the U today, and he was actually looking to make sure that we were in line with the fees adjacent at the U. That's something that he doesn't have easy access to just look at, so he took a little field trip. So, and we try to do that, and we stay on top of that throughout the year. That way we can be dynamic in our pricing model. We can change it so we can match or better, or we can make, justify our rate based on what's surrounding us. We do those benchmark comparisons, like I said, and then we look at some demand pricing. So some seasonal price increases during peak were appropriate. We do have peak seasonal rates in active right now. We've had those for some time at a number of the regional locations. But then when it be kind of off-season, we drop it back down. We have looked at the same thing for evening and early bird rates, like we have one right now at Bohemian Flats. If people get there early, they get a lower daily rate than if they get there middle of the day. We're also looking at some twilight rates at some locations as well. So that's how we decide the fee. And then there are parking permits. So this is a piece of the puzzle that goes into that regional bucket. And we have not yet had a great opportunity to kind of flex that analytic muscle on the parking permit. So right now, we're bringing in, of that 1.7 million, we're bringing in about 100,000 in this annual parking permit, the sticker that goes on the windshield. It's $50 for a permit. There's a couple different prices, but it's a $50 permit. So it pays for itself after 20 hours of parking at our highest rate. But there are some folks that buy it and may never use it. They had good intentions. Some folks that buy it as a gift, and some people that use it every single day. Right now, we have no way to track that. We are working diligently, and we actually put in a budget request or proposal. I don't know if it'll make it all the way to this room, to help us get some technology in place that could help us even further to actually switch to a digital option where we'd be able to truly track use. But that's where we are right now, and that is one piece of the puzzle, is the parking permit. So what does the future look like for paid parking? Well, implementation of master plans could allow for expansion of paid parking, depending on what happens, but there are some areas where parking could be included in that master plan implementation. We'll continue to lean on parking studies and opportunities to improve user experiences while generating revenue. Kind of recently, there was a Worth parking study that improved wayfinding for overflow parking at busy sites. Thanks, Julie. Implement pay parking in areas that emerge as high use based on surrounding changes, like I just talked about at Bidet, like I talked about over here at Plymouth. When we see things change nearby and we see a lot all of a sudden is full and it's never been like that before, we go and check it out and decide if we need to increase the turnover there by implementing pay parking. And we're also looking at doing pay app-only zones in certain locations. We're starting with a little stretch that's right near the U, that's all mechanical meters, and we're going to give it a try. I think that we're going to be successful there. Most university students who might be parking there likely have the opportunity to utilize their telephone to pay. I parked the other day and I plugged a lot of quarters in there to go to the Gopher game. So that's where we are. And I hope that that addressed some of the questions that you may have, and now I can open the floor for questions.
Thank you. Great report. Commissioner Musich.
That was all fascinating. Thank you for going so in depth on this topic for us. Prior to COVID, we had been looking at getting away from the sticker and moving to a purely you pay and it's based on your license plate, whether or not you have a permit. Are we close to implementing that at this time?
President Forney, Commissioner Musich, I wouldn't say we're close. However, kind of a piece of the puzzle that we would need is we need to look at license plate enforcement by license plate. So we, as I mentioned, I did submit a proposal that would require a little bit of upfront equipment cost. We need to look at the administration that it would take, but I believe that my staff, Dan, the parking system analyst, could handle the admin. If we were to go to some kind of license plate recognition technology, we would be right there. We would be ready to turn it on. Right now in our current contract with Flowbird, the technology exists. We just aren't in a position to be able to utilize it for tracking quite yet. We're close.
Okay, and does the increased cost of implementing that consume more than an annual income component for that particular service? So like, do we bring in enough money for the annual patron permit to cover the costs of implementing digital only?
I believe that we would.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't know who came first, so I'm going to say Commissioner, Menz? Okay, go for it, Menz.
Thanks, President Forney. Yeah, I do have a question about the athletic facilities, and because I know that you probably expected me to have this question for you. We are short, and we have budget shortfalls with our ice arenas. And we support the parking. Parking supports part of the sculpture garden budget. And we don't think that that is impacting visitorship. We have many people coming from outside of the city using the ice arena, specifically Parade for sure. Why are we not capturing that regional revenue as a regional facility? Because even if it's $1 that each time someone parks, because right around the corner, we're charging $4 for anybody that uses Parade Stadium. And I'm concerned that we're not thinking outside the box to fund the ice arena that has a negative balance, and we have a debt service on. So I hear that there's not a lot of charging of parking in other places, but I do think that this is a justified way for us to fund facilities that utilize and have visitors that are coming from outside the city. So can we explore that a little bit further besides other cities don't do it?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, I can explore it further. There are considerations that we take in if our actions in one area would impact the other. So I think that would be a discussion I'd want to have with Assistant Superintendent Kalb, with the manager of the ice arena, Emily Wolf. I am an avid ice arena user. My daughter's a competitive figure skater. She's a hockey cheerleader for Minneapolis hockey. My son plays Minneapolis Storm hockey. He plays on 4 other leagues. And I have some experience on the user side too. So I think that all of that can really play into a pretty robust discussion about it. And I'm happy to explore it further with the people that I mentioned.
So, and I would also like to wonder if, like, we're not using advertising revenue to support those ice arenas really either. So other communities might be using board revenue, well as we're not using that. So comparing it to other places where they're getting other sources of revenue that we're also not getting. So I think that, you know, considering those things, and I appreciate you sharing that you're a user and you have this inside information, and but personally as a user, and we can figure out ways to give scholarships or whoever's registered for park hockey or other programs, you know, free parking or a parking pass. But I want to capture those regional dollars because they're visiting our ice arena, and I don't think it's going to have a negative impact on our revenue. There's so much need for ice.
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, noted. I will talk with staff.
Okay, I am actually going to go into open time, if that's okay. We'll come back to you all. Okay, so I'm going to read our open time rules. Thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during open time. Before we start, I want to provide an abbreviated version of the open time board rules. All individuals wishing to speak may call in before noon the day of the meeting to be placed on the agenda, or can sign up at the board meeting prior to the start of open time. I will be calling on people on the sign-up list only. Open time for public input shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes with a time limit to be allocated by the president. Please watch the timer to be considerate of others here to speak and stay within your allotted time. During open time, public testimony will be given without debate and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. 2 types of items not appropriate for open time in order to protect the privacy of all individuals are pending litigation and personnel issues. So please refrain from commenting on these specific personnel issues. We will not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone, so please ensure that all comments you make tonight comply with the policy. The board made the decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed. So only those signed up to speak may only speak for their own allotted amount of time. We also request that each speaker provide his or her name and address. And we have 3 speakers, so I'm going to give you each 3 minutes each. Richard Adair, please come forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Okay. So I'm here representing a couple of different organizations, and you can see on the slide that what our goals are here. Mostly we want to update you on some recent developments in our neighborhood, including one that we think is very important and you may or may not know about. The Bassett Creek Valley, which has been industrial for a century, is now residential. It's served by two very nice trails that are used by the people who are living there, but these trails don't connect. And the loose line in particular zigzags awkwardly on local streets so people don't get lost, get lost. There's an opportunity to buy a small part of the rail spur which would fix both of these problems. Here's the creek on the right, industry out, apartments in. Here's the Utapils Beer Garden on the site of a former spring water bottling company. Here's the Van Wyck to the new light rail station on the Green Line and to the Cedar Lake Rail to downtown on the river. Here's where the loose line trail leaves parkland and goes on the city streets. It doesn't look like a trail to me. The big news is coming. In the 1990s, the loose line was originally planned on the railroad spur, but after saying yes, the CP said no, so an interim trail was put on Cedar Lake Road. The trail planners at the time, one of whom is in this room with us today, said if the spur ever becomes available, we should snatch it and put the trail on the railroad spur. This year, Wellington Management has a contract to buy Pioneer Paper property, which is quite large, and wants to build a trail all the way from Cedar Lake Road to Van Wyck. This is really a big development. So here in the blue is the existing loose line trail. To the right, you can see where it leaves parkland and goes on city streets and takes that zigzag to get over to Bryn Mawr Meadows. If we could possibly buy just that little piece of green at the very end there, we could alleviate the problem of the trail being on streets and connect it to Van Wyck. The parcel that we would need is it's in blue on this plat map. So here are the key points. You can read them. We'd love to give you a tour. You can arrange that with Commissioner Schaefer when she gets home from her vacation. That's it.
Thank you,
And
Dick.
I'd like to thank my buddies Ben and Dave for making those nice maps for us.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to say your name correctly, but Mansour Akhtar, please come forward.
Is it on? Yes. Okay, my name is Mansour Akhtar. I live in 400 Groveland Avenue in Minneapolis by the sculpture garden. My question or request is, whenever I bike towards or within the Macasa area, there is so much problems. There are bikers who bike so fast and have no respect for kids or anybody else. And then there are people who are running on the bike lane in opposite direction. They're riding bike in opposite direction. So there is nobody who's monitoring these. We don't need police officer all over the circle to monitor these. We can hire, or I don't know how that works, but we can just hire monitors with the police badges and whatnot, so they respect other people. I have asked some people to get off the path, please. Running is dangerous for me and you because I can't see sometimes, corners and whatnot. And when you ask them, they threaten you physically. So if there are police officers, not just a police officer, but just a presence of park people, that will help. You don't need, very expensive police officers to be running around. There are same thing on the others. The whole lake is like that. There are parking places and the people are very hostile and doing things. And if you have monitors, you don't need all the police officers running around. They can just tell the police officer if something is going wrong, so it will eliminate all the high cost of running police officers. That's all I had to say.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mitchell Hatson.
Hello, thank you for having me. So I was just wondering, I guess, first of all, if there's a new forestry director. Does anyone know if there has been someone appointed? Okay. Well, yeah, I guess it would just be nice to have like a go-to. I know Philip has a lot of experience. He's got really in-depth knowledge, and we have like, it seems like ample people there that can do the job, that kind of know what's been going on. I know Craig Pincall is smart at this too. Philip's been here a little longer, but it would just be nice, like with contracts and this stuff, to have like a go-to person. I feel like I've been talking to Julie and Miss Ringgold enough where they probably never want to hear from me again, and that's not really their job. It would be nice to just have a go-to for that. And I feel like they do a lot of work already for forestry that should be forestry's job. And that kind of makes things confusing. But with that being said, the value of a tree has never changed, but now we just believe downtown interest in David Wilson when we're told that a tree planted 4 years ago, which might already be dead or will not survive less than 17 years, suddenly has miracle powers that it didn't before, which is nonsense. The offset program isn't even about CO2. It's about carbon plus credits issued by city forest credits. I don't know why people keep continuing something that has not ever been used to plant a single tree, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'd be happy if they have. But here's how city forest credits are actually broken down. Rainfall interception, stormwater, 50% of the 1 metric ton CO2 offset carbon plus credit. So that's half of the credit that we're getting for this carbon sequestration. It's for rainfall interception. Reducing heating costs, specifically natural gas, 30% of the 1 metric ton of CO2e or carbon plus credit. Obviously benefits CenterPoint. Number 3, reducing cooling costs, electricity, 16% of the 1 metric ton of carbon plus credits benefits Excel. CO2 avoided, and I remind you that this isn't an avoidance project, so it shouldn't even really be like this, but this is how the actual protocol is written. This is acquired by a data request, breaking down to different entities' credits, but this is the same methodology. 3.1% of the carbon plus credit is for CO2e, actual carbon. So we're engaged in a city forest credits deal right now where lots of trees are dead. They didn't pass the additionality test. The value they've always had has not changed, but now we're saying they increase in value over time. They can all die, and they can still be counted because of a reversal pool of 20%. Now, 30% of trees planted 3 years in a row died. So how does that even make sense to anyone here? We have lakes you can't swim in. No one likes that. Like, if we're actually going to invest in stormwater and focus on it, these entities are getting stormwater credits that you're losing money off of. Like, this value is being generated to create these offsets is directly benefiting polluters, hedge funds, developers. And I just urge you to look into who is related to the head of the Minneapolis Street Advisory Commission, which is the head of city forest credits, and Ching Fu Zhao, which they've worked together since 2014, like I said last year.
Thank you. Thank you. I will close then our open time and go back then to Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, President.
Oh.
Oh, there's more people.
You weren't on the list, Sean.
Yes, there wasn't a chance to sign up in the hallway when I arrived.
Oh. Are people okay with having, okay, yes, please come forward, Sean.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sean Fitzgerald, and I live in Powderhorn Park. I want to share some numbers with you. MPRB professional service contracts are up 300% in the last decade. You had your first report on this area in February 2022. At that time, the contract totals were 45 million with 13 million outstanding. Today in your board packet, you'll notice that the contracts total 75 million with 50 million outstanding. The accelerated rate of increasing these professional service contracts, according to my calculator, is $900,000 a month since February of 2022. This came to my attention because of a professional service contract on the agenda, which used, not usual that I've seen, an extra step of qualifying bidders as applicants. And 4 of 8 applicants were qualified, according to the information in the board packet. But unusually, there was no request for RFP, request for proposals, so that only one of those qualified applicants was granted an opportunity to provide a bid or a quote on the proposal. I know that in state of Minnesota, they have a statute that requires that the Department of Administration get quotes. I don't know if that applies to the park board when using state funds, but if it doesn't, it should. And I urge all of you to ensure that your staff is out shopping for the best deal for taxpayers and also keeping the door open for opportunities to participate in the government market. So when I head home now and pass a dozen or 2 beggars and homeless people and think about what $900,000 a month will mean to them. Thank you.
Thank you. That I will then officially close the open time and go to Commissioner Thompson regarding our presentation.
Thank you, President Forney. I do have a question around parking at Worth / the Loppet / traffic time all the time. I was taking some notes on the different aspects of the way that we think about parking, and I've been talking about and asking about this behind, not in this space, but since I was elected. And what's the logic of not charging at Worth? I'm just curious the current thinking around that.
President Forney, Commissioner Thompson, currently the lots that are right across the street from the Trailhead building are within a very close walk to the chalet lot at the Worth Golf Club. Additionally, there's no bump outs or street parking. At our enterprise facilities, like our golf courses, we don't charge for parking, as there's a fee for participating in that activity that's rather high. I mean, in comparison to maybe a pottery class, right? And at the time, we don't have a good balance of that free parking access that's easily available to people and paid parking. We have explored paid parking at that location. In fact, that was one of the discussions early on, and we tried to figure out, is there a way we could do some sort of voucher, to Commissioner Menz's point, a coupon, a pass, whatever it may be, and we haven't struck the balance on that. Currently, Worth Park has been part of a parking study to provide us some true data on use that really actually, I think, will it'll quantify, but will also I can't think of the right word, make us feel like we know what we're doing and we're talking about, because we can see where the influxes are, right? In the summer months, we've got the kind of the big heat is down by the beach and the volleyball courts and the pavilion. And in the winter months, the big heat on parking is up near the trailhead, where we have this kind of congestion and parking struggles. So as a result of that data and those studies, we hope that we're going to be able to find a good balance. Currently, we just haven't figured out what the right balance is, and that's why we're not charging for parking at that. We're certainly not going to charge at the chalet, at least at this time. And that's why we haven't started charging at the trailhead either, because they're just kind of all right there.
This is just floating ideas that I've asked before behind doors. Have we considered that if you were to golf, for example? Because I personally, we're talking about personally, like I've personally used all the aspects of for all the reasons, right? And I respect that people come in from other places in town. Like as you said, we don't charge for parking for golf, especially it's difficult to get golf clubs on a bike. So is there some way that, when you say buy a permit to go play, 9 holes or whatever, 18, you could get a parking pass that would be good for X amount of time and it would just sit in your windshield like the good old days that we used to do with our lifeguard passes? Or like, could we do like a seasonal pass in the wintertime for a similar kind of idea? I mean, I'm just floating this out there because I know that parking is a massive issue, especially in the winter, and it also makes that aspect kind of impassable as a resident if you're using other modes of transportation or even just driving through. And I would love to see that alleviated. And sometimes I think that making people pay sometimes incentivizes them to find different things like carpool or whatever. I mean, so I'm an advocate for that, and I was curious the logic, and I would look forward to finding out when that study is done.
Certainly, President Forney, Commissioner Thompson, my staff who was previously in the parking role said to me often, I really like to have an interesting problem to solve. And I think that this is an interesting problem to solve that we've been looking at for quite some time and trying to figure out the best methods. Those ideas are viable for us to look into. We will need different methodology of technology. And I think that if we were to if the proposal makes it all the way to you about moving forward with this license plate technology, that could put us in a better position to do a couple of the ideas that you just put forward, ideas that Commissioner Menz has put forward and others. We'd still obviously want to do viability analysis and determine what staff feel is the best proposal to bring to the board. But we're close. We're getting our ducks in a row. But I can appreciate the congestion that occasionally happens at each of those locations.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's just also just that as the District 2 representative, and I don't know how my colleagues feel who represent places that have maybe already changed over to regional amenities. Worth didn't necessarily have that vibe, and now it does in the last 8 years. So I think that there's still some barrier with my constituents on getting over that. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Vice President Bene.
Thank you, President Forney. Thanks for the presentation. I really don't know. It's me. It's not you, but the $50 parking pass, is that per month?
Oh, I'm sorry. President Forney, Commissioner Bene, it is an annual fee.
That might be a little bit of an opportunity in some targeted lots, it seems to me. Around the university. Don't say I said that. Okay, and then, I think, I'm glad that the slide included, that essentially capital or major maintenance isn't really included in this, and I don't see a lot of play in your revenue, other than maybe that parking pass. But I don't know if that would generate that much. It was $100,000 a year. But ideally, the total cost of ownership pretty much would be covered by the parking rates as much as possible. So if there could even maybe be, is there like a capital improvement plan for parking lots? And I mean, I'm thinking even about all the parking lots, even in the neighborhood parks. I know those might just be part of the neighborhood park budgets, I suppose, but.
President Forney, Commissioner Bene, I can't speak to the capital improvement plan for parking lots in general, but I would say that for the enterprise parking lots, that's an area that has the opportunity for us to be more strategic and consider that differently. We have paid for capital improvements in the enterprise lots through the enterprise CIP. but more as one-offs based on need and not a holistic plan.
Okay. Well, I think that it would be great if it could happen, but I see the issue. You don't have a lot of float in this plan. The only other thing I'll mention is, if eventually with parking lot sweeping, it's really a good best management practice for stormwater, but the stormwater fees could eventually cover that twice a year. So, okay, thanks.
Great presentation, thank you. I have to say, I am one of those who buys an annual, and I do give them as gifts, so I love it, and my friends enjoy it as well. So, thank you for the presentation. So we move on to our next update, which, oh, I'm sorry, didn't see you.
Thank you, President Forney, and thank you, Director Olson, for the presentation. We are anticipating in this budget cycle bringing forward a better capture of all of the costs associated to parking within the enterprise budget, including adding it into the capital improvement program within enterprise, as well as looking at the operating dollars. And in general, you can see today what the current philosophy is around the pay parking program. And if commissioners, as a collective, feel like that should be different, that would be good information for us to have.
Wonderful. So now on to our update from Chief Ohado, our 2024 Park Police Department Summer Update. Take it away.
Good evening, President Forney and Commissioners. My name is Jason Ohado. I serve as the Park Board's Police Chief. I'm here to provide you just a staff report on our year-to-date crime statistics throughout the park system and talk a little bit about activities that have occurred over the course of the summer. I'm joined here today by my command staff, Lieutenant Calvin Noble and Lieutenant Andrew Klein. I think I've said this to you all before, but any success that the Park Police Department or that I might have is the result not of the work necessarily that I do behind a computer in an office, but of really talented police officers and police leaders like Lieutenant Noble and Lieutenant Klein. So I'm thankful for their support and their help and their service to the board, and especially their support of me. So President Forney, you may remember we had a strategy meeting back last February to talk about how we were going to approach the summer season within the park system in 2024. Throughout the course of that meeting with all supervisors, Superintendent Bangora, and others, we identified 3 focus zone parks based on historic crime trends that we would provide extra attention to throughout the course of the 2024 season. Initially, those focus area parks were Loring, Elliott, and the Commons. We eventually added Farview Park based on what was trending over the course of summer back on July 1st. We also, as you all know, have struggled to some degree with filling vacancies and getting staff on board. And so in order to maintain service levels and to provide directed patrols in those focus locations, we bolstered our patrol assignments using overtime. We've used overtime pretty robustly over the last couple of summers. We've provided directed patrols Thursday through Sunday from 11 in the morning until 10 in the afternoon. That started the middle of last April, and it will end the end of September. This was year 2 of our trespass policy that was approved by Superintendent Bangora back in 2023. That was one of our strategies to take on repeat or chronic offenders who often show up at the same parks over and over. We work very closely with both recreation staff and Street Reach from Community Connections and Violence Prevention Department. That's an important strategy for us in policing the parks to make sure that we're working across departmental functions, that people are aligned with strategies, and that we're all working together to make sure that we're systemically solving problems where we can. We focused a lot this year on doing a level of investigative follow-up that we haven't necessarily done in the past, especially around car break-ins. We've had some success that I think I've shared with commissioners around getting some serial car burglars charged. And as you'll see in a little bit, the impact that has had on property crimes is pretty significant. We collaborate closely with both the city attorney's office and the county attorney's office. We have bi-weekly meetings throughout the course of the summer with the city attorney's office, and they've been really engaged in making sure that they're doing everything they can to support safe parks. This summer, we also initiated a pilot project where we've identified some park police officers to serve as a park response team, to be able to go to areas where we're seeing emerging crime trends, or if we need assistance with apprehending a wanted person or a fugitive. And what they've been doing is shadowing the MPD 1st Precinct community response team to see how they do their work, and to be able to leverage resources and work in partnership so that we gain some knowledge and access through the MPD 1st Precinct CERT team, and our officers are able to walk away with significant experience and training. And finally, Commissioner Musich, this one's for you. This was a commissioner budget amendment back in 2022, I believe, for the 23 budget, and it included outdoor cameras covering the parking lots at Minneapolis Falls Regional Park. And those cameras were constructed, supported, and put online earlier this summer season. The expansion of camera coverage in regional parks and parking lots is really important in our approach to being able to both intervene and then follow up and solve crimes after they've happened. So what I'm going to share with you tonight is generally really good news, but I want to temper that with also acknowledging that there are challenges and that each of the numbers that are on these charts represent people who have been the victims of crime. So while we're going to talk about crime reductions, I don't want to lose sight of that there are times very challenging situations that happen across the park system. So as you can see on the bar graphs in front of you, year to date, we've had 240 Part 1 crimes in the park system. That is down to pre-pandemic, pre-2020 levels. It's the first time that's happened in the last 5 years. We've seen steady crime reductions since 2022, and where we are today is in line with pre-2020 levels. When we compare violent crime and property crime, you can see that violent crime is also down, but it's down at a level that's still slightly above 2019 and has been within pretty close range over the last several years. But where we've seen pretty significant reductions, like I talked about just a moment ago, is in property crimes. The bulk of that property crime reduction is related to a reduction in car break-ins, the car burglaries that we see, especially in the regional parks. People often ask me about which parks have the most crime. This is only looking at serious violent crime. So robbery, rape, homicide, and aggravated assault. And you can see that each section of these graphs represents a year, and that overall, the crimes that have historically had more violent crime have had very little crime the last 2 years. That has been in large part to because of the strategy that we've implemented around designating the focus areas where we're assigning all officers on duty to spend parts of their shift there, and also the dedicated overtime assignments throughout the summer months. So for example, you can see in 2021 and 2020 and 2021, Loring Park had a significant number of violent crimes. Those violent crimes have really moderated almost down to none over the last couple of years. Elliott Park was a significant challenge, especially last summer. We've had success there with reducing the number of violent crimes. The one area where we have seen violent crime go up significantly was at Farview Park. That's why we've added Farview Park as a focus zone. The crime trends that we see there are mostly involving juveniles committing robberies, frankly. And we're working alongside recreation staff and street reach staff to make sure that we're taking this challenge on as an enterprise and not just as a law enforcement or policing issue. So this is just looking at 2024. Again, you can see the anomaly here is Farview Park, and then it's followed by Badema-Casca, PV, and East Phillips Park, although all of those numbers are relatively small in comparison. Moving on from the crime statistics, I just want to note that this was a big summer for events in the park system. The park police support about 400 special events or permits over the course of any given year. Some of those are really small events like wedding receptions at Nicollet Island, and some of them are really big events like what I've listed here. So early in the year, there was the 2024 Cross Country World Cup at Theodore Wirth Regional Park. Twin Cities Pride this year was tremendously successful, and it had a huge crowd in large part because of tremendous weather. The Red, White, and Boom fireworks returned on Independence Day for the first time since 2019. Independence Day, as you all know, has been a really challenging day for our city and our park system related to crime and violence. And I will say this year was the best year that we've had at least since 2022. We also hosted the Aquatennial fireworks, and for the first time ever, the Basilica Block Party, which took place at Boom Island the first weekend in August. We have worked a lot of hours this year supporting special events. And so what you see at the bottom of the slide is a comparison of hours worked. This is outside of regular assignment. These are extra hours to support special events, and we're at our highest level since 2019. We're not back to 2019 levels, but we are making progress. And like I said, it's the most number of hours we've worked in the last 5 years. So far in 2024, I've been able to hire 5 park police officers. 1 is currently in field training, and 4 are due to graduate from the police academy at the end of this month. We have 2 additional park officers who have candidates who have conditional job offers with an eye on starting them in October. And recruiting has begun to fill our last vacancy, as of right now, our last vacancy. And we expect to hopefully have that filled by first quarter of next year. This means we will be fully staffed in 2025 for the first time in at least the last 5 years. That is huge for our department. We have had officers who've been working a tremendous amount of overtime, not only to support special events like we just talked about, but just to maintain basic service levels. And so, in the course of a year for the Park Police Department, which only has 35 total sworn officers, including our supervisors and command staff, to hire 7 officers is an incredible lift. It also means that our department is incredibly young and relatively inexperienced, and there are challenges that will also come with that. But I'm excited for 2025. There's a lot of energy within the organization and the department around having new staff who are excited to do this work, and we're really looking forward to going into next year with a full complement of officers. Before I take any questions, I also just want to mention that this Saturday, September 7th, North Commons Park will be hosting Battle of the Badges. So this is a barbecue competition which involves the Park Police Department, Minneapolis Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, and the Minneapolis Fire Department. Superintendent Bangora will be one of the judges for the competition. I invite all of you to come out and at least offer some words of encouragement, maybe try some barbecue, but it should be a great event. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Vice President Bennett.
Just wanted to say, thank you, President Forney. I just wanted to say thanks for the presentation, and thank you very much for including the 2019 data. That's really important because I think that's a much better benchmark than some of the other years, so thanks.
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, so a big issue across the metro has been copper wire theft, and that results in less lighting and issues around that. I'm wondering if you have noticed any trends around that recently, or any comments on kind of issues stemming from that?
President Forney, Commissioner Olson, especially in 2023, many of our parkway lights were targeted for copper wire theft. The city is actually responsible for maintaining the parkway lights. The park board maintains the pathway lights. And to a greater degree, the parkway lights were targeted. I heard numbers of like $200,000 worth of damage related to wire theft of parkway lights last year. As a result of what happened last year, I think there have been a number of things that have happened that have mitigated wire theft in 2024. We have seen far less wire theft in 2024 versus 2023. I think we're doing a better job of securing the light posts. I think that there's an effort to change out copper wire with aluminum wire. I think that there was some work done at the legislature to prevent the salvaging of some of this copper material without appropriate identification. And so all of those things, I think, have helped reduce the problem this year. Also, there have been a number of arrests and people charged related to some of this wire theft from light poles, and certainly that has helped as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Menz.
Thanks for the report, Chief. I had a really great work. I did have a question. I actually was, a phone call came in today to me about an area in my district, and another area, it reminds me of another area, and I'm just kind of wondering how we police these areas. So at the Franklin Bridge, down the stairs, there's a trail along the river. It's kind of hidden, and I'm also thinking of down near Stone Arch Bridge, where we go down the stairs, and it's kind of hidden. How are those areas policed or insured for safety? This was a specific concern from an individual who was concerned that there might be more of a risk there. I don't know what the reason was, but what have you seen in those spaces where there are really awesome natural areas, but they're very hidden from view?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, the natural areas, especially along the river, pose a challenge for us to patrol. Because really the only way you can patrol those areas is to separate from your squad car and walk down and dedicate a significant period of time to do that work. We don't do that as much as we would like. And frankly, it's a function of not having enough people to do the work. And so we rely heavily on other park board staff, maintenance staff, for example, and natural surveillance provided by park users to report when something is happening or has happened, or if they have a concern, and then we're able to follow up directly on that concern. You know, even with our full complement of 35 budgeted positions, it would still be challenging for us to spend significant hours of foot patrol along these natural spaces. And so I think, like I said, we rely on natural surveillance, our operations and maintenance staff. I think that we have made some advancements in surveillance technology, like the cameras that have been placed at Minneapolis Falls Regional Park, which, you know, maybe they're not actively monitored, but they certainly provide a great resource for evidence if a crime were to happen.
Have we considered, or are there places in the park system where there's like those mechanisms where people can feel safer because there's a push button or a phone call? I've seen those on college campuses, and maybe along those spaces, since the university is so close, maybe there's a partnership there, like where people can feel like they're safer because there's this thing there for me to call for an emergency. So just coming up at this point, do we have plans, or how can we support that work to make sure that people are perceiving that they're safer? Because sometimes it's a perception issue.
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, there was a time, probably about 20 years ago, in which we had emergency call boxes at Bede-Makaska, and we removed those. They were prone to having false calls, false alarms. but they were also frankly replaced by cell phones. I mean, you would be hard pressed to find almost anybody in our park system that isn't carrying a cell phone. And that cell phone is way more effective for contacting emergency services than one of these call boxes. And so, you know, there may be other things that we can do to bolster someone's feeling of safety. I think then maybe you begin to lose the feeling of a natural area, but you know, those are certainly things that could be considered. I just don't know that emergency call boxes get us to where we need to be.
Thanks for your responses. Appreciate it.
Oh, I just saw your light. Commissioner Music, sorry.
Thank you, President Forney. Chief Ohado, you mentioned that we are now seeing pre-pandemic levels of type 1 crimes and getting closer to that as well for other types of crimes in the system. With that reduced volume of crime that's occurring, are we also seeing more time for our officers to be able to do the proactive police activities that they used to be able to have more time to do, such as interacting with park users in a positive way, dealing with some of the nuisance conditions that do contribute to a not pleasant park experience, like off-leash dogs, speeding, behaviors like that?
President Forney, Commissioner Musich, the frank answer is not yet.
Okay.
So, you know, as I mentioned, we've got 5 officers who are in training right now, and they're not taking on their own assignment. The way that we've been able to manage many of these issues is through the use of overtime over the course of the summer months. And that overtime, we have tried to make laser focused on doing the most they can to prevent violent crime in the areas where we think it's going to occur. And so spending time in those focus area parks, doing directed patrols, proactive enforcement, working with rec staff and CCBP staff certainly, but you know, the amount of discretionary time that we are prioritizing things like off-leash enforcement isn't probably as high as it would have been back in 2019 or thereabouts.
And do you anticipate that that will change once we have a full complement of officers on staff in 2025?
President Forney and Commissioner Musich, yes, certainly. I think as we are able to fill more regular assignments, those officers will have discretionary time to do some of those things. We still have had challenges with filling our park patrol agent position, which is mostly a part-time position within our organization. Traditionally, it has been a springboard for people entering the policing profession, and we have not been able to hit our recruitment goals with that job the last many years.
Okay. Well, I'll look forward to seeing what improvements we see in these numbers and the ability for that type of work to occur once we have that full staffing next year. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, President Forney, and thank you, Chief Ohado. My questions are very similar to Commissioner Musich's. But I do also, before I ask them, want to just say thank you for all the ways that you were targeting spaces and seeing it go down. And it's really wonderful to hear and to see and to know. My questions are around the same thing and sort of a shifting trends, and maybe just planting a seed of how do we deal with things, not just a lot of vehicles speeding on our parkways and passing people on our parkways, but also I have a great concern, I know Commissioner Schaefer does too, she and I have talked about a lot of e-bikes racing down pathways, and I genuinely have zero clue how to necessarily solve those things, apart from like some sort of geocaching where we could force people to slow down. I don't know how that works. But it's, like I said, it's pretty much exactly just supporting Commissioner Musich's questions, and I already got the answer, but I'm just planting a seed and saying thank you for your hard work.
President Forney and Commissioner Thompson, if I could just respond
Please.
briefly. I do think that there is increased need for traffic enforcement and traffic intervention strategies across our city, not just on the parkways, but on many streets. I think you may be aware that there was a fatal crash right down the road from here over the weekend at 24th and Washington. The city is piloting the speed cameras once again. I think you should see those start popping up next year. I'm not aware of them going on any parkways at this point, but I think that that's a good first step when especially MPD is not anywhere close to being staffed to a point where they can dedicate traffic enforcement. I will also say, though, that law enforcement is really labor-intensive work, and deciding to prioritize traffic enforcement can be challenging for me when we're trying to intervene with violent crime. And I'm not saying that we don't want to do it or we're not going to do it, but what I'm saying is there need to be more tools in the toolbox, and some of those, frankly, are capital investments around how we design these roads. West River Parkway does not have a stoplight on it. From Minneapolis Falls to here, there's no stoplight, and there's probably maybe a handful of stop signs. We have created, unintentionally, a highway for commuters to come from South Minneapolis to downtown. And so, when we think big picture, can Chief Ohado send a cop out there to do speed enforcement? Yeah, I can. Is that going to solve our systemic problem? Probably not. And so I think, if we want to take on big problems, we have to think big picture, and some of that has to do with how we're designing these parkways.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I agree, and I know that it's low-hanging fruit in the problems that our city has faced in the last several years, but it also exacerbates some of these issues exactly you're saying. So I appreciate the mental space to even consider how to solve some of these problems. Thank you, Chief Otto.
Superintendent Bangora.
Thank you, President Forney. I appreciate it. I don't get a very often chance to say something in words that I'm fortunate to be working with Chief Ohado. When I came back here, 19 years prior, I knew Chief from day one, working together for a long time. So coming back was a real privilege to be working with him. But I wanted to acknowledge sometimes he's a very humble man, but he does incredible work. I'll say one thing that not only in his work that he does in our one-on-ones, in our conversations, in our talk, but his dedication to the work, and particularly getting the force back to where it is today and knowing that we're almost at 35. We had conversations before. It was really challenging trying to get those officers. And he's tenacious, and he stuck with it and really recruited to get these, and his team to get these officers and get back to almost a full force here. I want to acknowledge the real, the work that he did and his team and his officers to get to this point, which is just incredible. And I also am very grateful too, because he sends me on a regular basis a lot of the cases that are solved. You just see it come out as a superintendent, then he kind of puts the cases. I have the privilege of seeing those on a regular basis. It's really amazing. I know you don't get to see it all the time, but I do. And they do incredible work, investigative work, and crimes that are solved and apprehension. It's really, it's wonderful to see, and very, very fortunate to see that. And the last thing I'll leave is that I experienced, my wife, of course, went through a very difficult situation on 48th and Grand by Fuller Park. And I remember, leaving, I was on a call and I got over to the park and my wife was standing there, and the two people that I saw that were there was Officer Zabinski and Officer Young. And they were amazing. Thank you.
Commissioner Menz for a second time.
Yeah, so coming back to the speed in the park, so like on the parkways, you said the city is implementing some of these speed cameras where they're going to send out tickets in result. So how are we working to maybe ensure that those get on the parkways? It does seem like that might be a way to slow people down on the parkway. I know that I've gotten a ticket from Iowa, and I don't ever want to go through Iowa again. I don't. There's no reason to go through Cedar Falls anyway. So,
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, right now the legislature has authorized a pilot program And I think depending on how that pilot program goes, we'll understand if there's full legislative authority for local government to implement this on a wider scale. This was tried once before. The courts deemed that it didn't have legislative authority. That's why we haven't had them in a number of years. That's why it's a pilot project now. And I think, frankly, we just have to see how it goes.
And would the ticket revenue go to the park board or would it go to the city? We don't know.
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, I think right now it's being handled as an administrative ticket with a relatively low fine that would go entirely to the city. I don't know that that has been completely parsed out for where this will end up if the legislature grants full legislative authority. Traditionally, a ticket that our police officers would issue through Hennepin County courts, the fines are divvied up between the issuing jurisdiction, Hennepin County, the courts, and a couple of other surcharges along with that.
Okay. And just really one final question, and especially in regards related to parking. Our park police are not the ones who issue parking tickets. Am I correct in that, or are you all?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, certainly our officers have authority to issue parking tickets, but that is not how they're spending any of their time, frankly. Our park patrol agents, though, do conduct the paid parking enforcement for the MPRB. And we dedicate a park patrol agent assignment 7 days a week, at least 8 hours a day, to do that parking enforcement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Olson?
Yeah, just to piggyback on the camera stuff. Yeah, I think it's a legislative issue at this point, and so for us, it'll be kind of an intergovernmental thing. See how it goes, and most every other state or municipality that has implemented it has seen really solid results as far as reduction in speeding and fatalities and injuries and things of that nature. So, personally, I think it'll definitely be something that we'll want to pursue with our legislators and encourage them to support in the future. But that's a conversation for another day. Thanks.
Great. I'll just make a few comments. Huge kudos on your attracting officers. That I think is just a real feather in your cap. I know that the city's doing better, but we're doing a superior job, and thank you so much for that. That is, I think, there's so many, what should we say, narratives out there that, we are just a cesspool of crime and everything like that. And it's just been wonderful to read, so many of the articles that's not necessarily the narrative that's, and you are proving this with your report. I also want to give a shout out to a woman whom I know very personally, and that's Eileen Johnson. I don't know if any of you know who she is, but she is the person who has started these safety walks that everybody who's been out in the parks in orange T-shirts and everything like that. Started in North Commons, then to Loring. Anyway, she's done a great job of expanding it. Do we have any measurement, perhaps, of how effective they've been that you might be able to share?
President Forney, what I would say is that there's no measurement or statistical data. There's qualitative reports that I hear from community. I actually am having coffee with Eileen tomorrow morning, and she was a great partner to me in our efforts, especially at Loring Park. Loring Park has been at times a very challenging place for our police department because of crime and activities that have taken place there historically. And one of the things that I really insisted on was that there be community ownership over parts of that space and that park. And Eileen, through her work at the Women's Club and then through her work with the safety walking groups, have given neighbors a feeling of ownership over that space. They go every Thursday evening, they walk the neighborhood, they spend time in the park, they pick up trash, they talk to people, they give information about crime prevention and safety tips, and it makes people feel like they are making a difference in their community and in their park, and they are.
I agree, and it's been spreading all over the city, and I'm just really excited. Please acknowledge her that I'm very grateful for her service and everything. And by the way, West Paddy-McCoska also doesn't have one single solitary stop sign either, so that's someplace. And the speed cameras, I have seen them out, and the gentleman who spoke about the bicyclists and everything, hopefully those things are effective. And if I understand correctly, that we have taken on actually more investigative work from the city in the past, and from a budgetary standpoint, I think that's something that's very important for us all to realize, that you guys are taking on more, right?
President Forney, one of the things that has happened with the staffing crisis with MPD is that they've had to contract services. And historically, MPD has always investigated complex crimes involving adult suspects that have occurred in parks. So, you know, homicide is the one that's very clear. They continue to investigate homicides. But in the past, they've also investigated things like kidnapping and robbery and carjacking and sex crimes especially. And as their capacity has contracted, all of those cases that are occurring in parks, which we have not historically investigated, have come back to us to investigate. We had a very heinous crime that took place this summer near Cedar Lake, where a woman was carjacked, kidnapped, and sexually assaulted. And that case was investigated and solved by our investigators. That was a very complex investigation, very challenging for our crew of 3 total investigators. Not something that we historically have done in the past. Clearly, in this time, we step up, we do it. We want victims to have justice. We want to make sure that our parks are safe. We want to make sure that crimes are followed up on. But we are doing more than we ever have investigatively.
Well, Chief O'Hara, thank you so much for your service, and Lieutenant Opel and Klein, thank you for being here. Very, very proud of your work. So, yes.
President Forney and Commissioners, I was just going to say really quickly, I know you had asked about the pilot on the camera, this camera safety pilot. So the legislature did allocate $1 million one-time money to DPS and MnDOT to engage in the pilot. The city of Minneapolis is allocated up to 42 cameras based on population. They're going to start with 5, so they're going to start small. And then MPRB would need to opt in to participate, as would the county if they would like to participate. So, and then the revenue generated, I know you asked about that, that will go back to the administration of the program at this time.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Third time, Commissioner Menz?
Well, this is new information about a discussion.
Go
I mean,
ahead,
we are a
please
board
do.
of directors. So would that mean board action for us to opt in, or is that something that the staff would decide?
Thank you, President Forney and Commissioner Menz. That I don't know, but I can find out if you'd like, if the board.
Let's do it.
Thank you for the report. We are now then on to reports of officers. Superintendent Bangora.
All right.
You probably have a couple of seconds to wait until it gets teed up
Yes.
by our
Thank you.
AV officer.
Thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. Appreciate it. Okay, let's set up here. Give it a quick moment. I noticed that when I look at myself back on this, I was leaning forward into the mic, and I realized I can push it back. So I'm just hunched over. A little critical. All right, I'll get started here. So we'll start, of course, as usual. Again, very excited to present some wonderful work that we're doing in our park system. And as we've talked about before, when we tell the general public, we talk about our strategic goals that the board has set forward for not only myself, but the organization to accomplish every single year in the 4-year term. So we tie these kind of reports into our strategic directions. So we'll start with our strategic direction A, act boldly for our climate future. The University of Minnesota Research Lab releases spores along Victory Memorial Parkway. Horticulture staff coordinated with Dr. Vera Krisnick research team to release spores from a native pathogen to establish 4 test plots along Victory Memorial Parkway. Plots are located between North 45th Avenue and North 43rd Avenue on the east side of the parkway along Xerxes. These native pathogens are being researched to determine its viability as a biocontrol for Japanese beetles in Minnesota. Really nerdy, but pretty exciting, and great work with the University of Minnesota. I know Commissioner Abeni would like that, so it's good. The U, strategic direction B, cultivate each community's place and honor cultural traditions in Minneapolis parks. Creative Entrepreneurship Program Summer 2024 Spark Studios. And I think in front of you also have like a 3-page for I take a look at. It's pretty, really so cool. The Creative Entrepreneurship Program. Spark Studios offered its first youth employment program, providing paid training and professional experience to 9 young people, ages 15 to 19, for 7 weeks at Harrison Recreation Center. Youth were hired and paid for the position through Teen Teen Works, working 9 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m., 4 days a week at Harrison Studio. Job expectations included learning how to write a project proposal, professional networking, financial planning, demonstrating Adobe Creative Suite proficiencies, and creating a media project to reflect their professional goals. We're able to share some personal reflections from some of the youth who were part of the program. One of them said, I am from Minneapolis, but grew up at Leech Lake Reservation. This program has led me to create a mini book about Morris Industrial Boarding School. I chose this topic because I'm Native American, and my book shares history of what has continued to be a long-term impact on the Native American community and toxic traumas that still haunt my family. Tree, Amelia, 17 years old. I'm a Chinese-American writer and photographer raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I use visual and written forms of expression to show both my love and hate for our world. I write to create worlds that are different from ours and tell stories often overlooked. That's Vivian, age 18. I'm a musician, instrumentalist, and artist from Minneapolis who hopes to create music combining elements and the adventure of classical music with modern pop and hip-hop to entertain others and expose a younger, broader audience to classical music. That's Jude, 17 years old. In the past 7 years, we have done so much and have gotten to know each other. I will miss the community and this place and the people. That's Una, age 16. So that's just some experiences. And again, I think this presentation here, this document kind of showed the really amazing work that young people are doing in our studio, and so incredibly proud of them and our team and the work they're doing in these really creative spaces. And there's not a video, is there? No? I think we're good. Okay. I don't think there's anything else. Sorry. Strategic direction C, implement quality youth and intergenerational programs. Cycling Without Age Trishaw Ride Program. The MPRB Cycling Without Age Trishaw Program kicked off this summer on May 29th, 2024. This program provides free 20 to 45-minute rides in our beautiful parks to community members 55 and older who have limited mobility, along with a companion rider of 18 years or older. We offered riding events during the summer, had participants, and worked with, I'm not sure the number, seniors living sites across the city. I don't have exact numbers on this, but I can get that on this document. We also work with the Recreation Center to offer rides during their senior events. This new intergenerational program has touched so many lives already and will continue to grow in the future. Added midway through the summer were short videos recorded and produced by our very own Angela Salisbury, MPRB archivist. She talked with senior riders about the history of Loring, Nokomis, and Boom Island parks, as well as the famous Burger Fountain. All videos have been shared on our social media platforms. Some of the comments we received from the rides include, my mother hasn't stopped smiling since she went on the Trishaw ride. This is the most fun I've had in years. These are on exclamation marks, by the way. This is the very first activity I participated and since I moved here over a year ago. I used to bike all the time, and now I can't. Now I can't enjoy the things I did until today. Awesome. I want to ride holding a sign that says fun, and those are in capital exclamation mark. When are you coming back? Which is really cool. So I've had a chance to actually watch all of those, if you've seen them, with Angela, and she's just so wonderful, and just the way that she articulates and talks about the ride, and to see the person next to her as she's talking about the history of the park system. I absolutely love it, and I just find so much joy in it. And I'm actually taking my mother and father-in-law on a ride. I reserved a time, so we're gonna go do that. So grateful for this program. For Maggie, who leads it, for Mimi kind of saying yes to me when I was talking about this. So it's been absolutely wonderful. And I hope to get more trishaws and do more across our park system, have a fleet. So strategic direction D, care for park assets to meet evolving needs and practices. Pressure washing of the Beards Plaisance picnic shelter. MPRB members Craig Nelson, Gary Nail, and Ogden Miller borrowed a pressure washer trailer from the paint shop to perform deep cleaning at Beards Plaisance picnic shelter the weeks of August 12th. The detailed work helps to remove cobwebs from the shelter roof, cleans off tables, removes stains from the concretes, and improves the quality of the space. The team did a great job making the space clean and enjoyable for picnics through the rest of the summer season. Grateful for them. It seems like such a simple thing, but it really makes an incredible difference. And so thank you to the team for doing that, and very grateful for that. And I love the word Beards Plaisance. I don't know what it is. It's really cool. All right. Strategic direction E, steward our natural areas, hazard, tree removal, and storm cleanup. Forestry crews have been hard at work since returning from the strike. In addition to performing general maintenance and service requests, crews have been removing hazard trees and doing storm cleanup, as well as some stump grinding and even stump extraction. So with that, President Forney and Commissioners, that's what I have to share with you. And so if any questions, we will take those now. So thank you so much.
Awesome news. Commissioners, any questions of the superintendent? Not seeing any lights. We'll go to petitions and communications, and I'll begin with Commissioner Menz.
Pass.
Oh, Commissioner Thompson.
Pass.
Oh, my. Commissioner Musich.
Pass.
Commissioner Rucker.
Pass.
Commissioner Olson.
Pass.
Commissioner Alper.
Yes, I would like to share with you all that there is some land for sale by Bluff Street Park, and it has been offered to the park board. It's a tiny strip of land, and I will pass on the information to Secretary Ringgold to share with the full board. But, you know, we often look at opportunities that come across the board for acquiring land, I would say in areas that maybe not throughout the city, and certain areas I think we've looked at recently. We haven't looked at acquiring any land recently in District 3, to my knowledge. I can't think of any. But this is by the river, this is by a large apartment building, and frankly, I think it should be considered fully. So I'll make sure you have that information.
Thank you. Vice President Abene.
Pass.
Oh, yes. Commissioner
Did you
Musich.
provide that to the staff in the planning division so that they can investigate that they're nodding at me? Never mind. Thank you. We're good.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. You were passing?
Pass.
Okay. So just a reminder, majority of the commissioners still haven't gotten our phones updated, so please get those into IT.
I have a question about that. May I
Yes,
ask a clarifying
certainly.
question? So can that, I was unsure if the updating process, there were some steps. There was like step 1, and that had to be done by us. And then there was a step 2, and it was unclear if that had to be us handing in our equipment or meeting with MPRB staff, or could it be done remotely? So I needed clarification before I could respond
Is anybody
to
available
how
to clarify?
my availability.
Deputy Superintendent.
President Forney, I
Superintendent,
don't
yep.
know the answer, but I'll find out and let you know.
I know I handed mine over, so anyway. Okay, we'll get some information to you about that. Then the other thing is, I just want to note that we've got a couple of birthdays that are real milestones. I don't know really what the history is here, but there's something very significant that we've got three 6-decade-old, is that the way I should say it? Anyway, Ann Walters, our finance director, Julie Wiseman, and our vice president, Benny. And so I would like to acknowledge all of you. Happy, happy birthday. Anyway, Julie's not here, but we'll go, so happy birthday to you all. And with that, then I will adjourn and we will go to operations.
And environment. And the time being 6:42 PM, I'd like to convene the Operations and Environment Committee. Secretary Ringgold, if you could please take the roll.
Vice President Abeni.
Here.
Commissioner Menz.
Here.
Commissioner Rucker.
Here.
Vice Chair Elper.
Here.
Chair Musich.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We now have an agenda. We have 2 meeting minutes on our agenda for approval this evening, one from March 20th of 2024 and one from June 18th, 2024. Could someone please move those?
So moved?
Seeing no lights, all those in favor of adoption of these minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries and we have adopted our minutes. Congratulations, everyone. This evening, we have before us one resolution. Could someone please move that?
I move resolution 2024-178. Resolution approving a donation agreement with the Loppet Foundation for a Trailhead Natural Area Restoration Project at Theodore Worth Regional Park.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I believe we have a presentation this evening to go along with this item.
Chair Musich, Commissioners, thank you very much. I have a relatively brief part of this presentation. My job in this project has been to take the donation agreement over the finish line. Big thanks to Assistant Superintendent Schroeder. This builds off of previous donation agreements we've used, so much of that language is the same. And I'm joined by James Schaefer, Natural Resources Supervisor and Interim Director of the LOPIC, Claire Wilson. This is really, they've done the work on this. I just put together the agreement, but they will be presenting kind of the work of it and the kind of, I think, vision and possibility this agreement brings forward. So just a reminder, this board is pretty familiar, but also for the viewing public, this donation agreement is coming to you on a 20-year relationship. And that's something important, I think, when we think of a level of agreement that is this sophisticated and will in itself be a 10-year agreement, is that this is a partner we've been working with for quite a while. They started their relationship with us around a marathon distance ski race permit and have worked their way into a more deep relationship with us where there was a donation of the trailhead, a lease back of that building to them, and an operating agreement for a significant portion of the area around the trailhead as well as all of our winter recreation trail grooming. That operating, donation, and lease agreement actually place us into an additional 40 years of agreement. So this is a partner that we will have for a long time. So there's a foundation here, I think, really to consider with this type of an agreement and the kind of trust and relationship that we have built. The donation agreement itself is a 10-year agreement. This is a little different than maybe what we did with the trailhead, which was, at completion of construction. This is around restoration of 62 acres And so it is a 10-year time process. It has an annual reporting and review process. There has a site council that will be doing much of the coordination, that has all of kind of the interested parties of staff and different disciplines within this area. It contemplates all of our kind of policies around engagement, anything that we would be needing to consider as an organization, helps delineate between public and private funds so we don't get tied up in procurement and other issues. It places a significant amount of the management of the agreement itself with the natural resources supervisor, and then it places a significant amount of relationship to the actual plan, that actual restoration plan, with the assistant superintendent of environmental stewardship. So there's some pieces here that we have really good checks and balances over time, and the ability for modifications within our existing staff, and in particular that designated representative. We'll be looking to make sure that any re-upping or changes to that plan that lays out the overall restoration is up to date with master plans, current policies, anything else that might change within the organization. And then the counterpart to that is the executive director as that designated representative for the LOPIT. And with that, I'm going to invite James to get into the more exciting part of this, not the agreement part of this, to start talking about what this will actually do for the organization.
Hi, thank you, commissioners. So this agreement kind of came about because there is a desire to do more restoration work around the trailhead. Currently, we've had kind of a long-term volunteer relationship with folks of the Loppet doing a lot of really good work, but under the constraints of our volunteer agreement. So we wanted to kind of empower them to be able to do more professional level work, to do the work that really needs to happen to fully restore the area around the trailhead, these 62 acres. So currently right around the trailhead, there are some really nice potential areas for prairies and savannas that would make fantastic habitat for wildlife, birds, and pollinators. There's also a lot of woodland as you get a little further away from the trailhead. And right now, the objectives are to restore those prairies, the savannas, and the woodlands, and to try to create a high diversity of native plants. So the first round of work will be a lot of invasive removal, but then with the intention of doing additional work to revitalize the native plant palette there as well. And then the Loppet also has goals of providing educational opportunities to their community and our park users in natural resources and kind of the natural environment of the area. This plan will be vetted by a site council of MPRB staff as well as Loppet representatives. It's made up of folks who will vet it for compliance with the Theodore Wirth Master Plan, our Natural Areas Phase 2 plan, making sure it's in alignment with our tree protection objectives, and making sure that it's within our volunteer guidelines, because it's still going to be using a lot of volunteer effort. We're also making sure that it minimizes impacts on the operations of the Theodore Wirth Golf Course, because that's also adjacent property there. This will be made up of staff that are kind of adjacent to each of those areas. So for example, I'll be the primary contact for compliance with the Natural Areas Plan. Our volunteer coordinator will be the primary site council representative for volunteer guidelines. We'll have a representative from forestry dealing with tree protection, a representative from golf sharing their perspective, and a representative from planning to ensure compliance with the Theodore Wirth Master Plan. Another part that will be a objective of the site council will be to vet each year's work plan. So each year the Loppet and their folks will present a work plan that will be vetted by the site council, as well as letting us know kind of the progress that was made on the previous year's work plan. So that's going to be part of an annual review that we do as staff and with the Loppet. They're going to be doing this in a phased approach. So I think their objective is to work kind of from the Loppet Trailhead Center outwards, concentrating largely on those prairies and savannas that are immediately adjacent to the Loppet. trailhead, and then working out into the greater part of the 62-acre natural area that is surrounding that portion of Theodore Wirth. And another piece of this this agreement is to try to clearly define what tasks are professional level versus what can be accomplished by volunteers. So that's one of the things we still want to maintain, is that this is going to be a primarily volunteer-focused restoration effort, but there are some tasks that are beyond the scope of things that volunteers can accomplish, and we would like to empower them to be able to do that. I think, yeah, so this is the 62 acres that are intended to be restored. If you see L1 on this map, that is where the trailhead area is. And the first phase of this project will be primarily what you see is the S1, 2, 3, and 4 are the savanna areas. And then the Ps 2, 3, and 4 are the prairie areas right adjacent to the trailhead. Those are going to be kind of the immediate push. And then in subsequent years, as they're able to continuing to push out from the trailhead area. I think we've got Claire's up next.
Thanks, Commissioners, and so much thanks to Deputy Superintendent Ringgold and Assistant Superintendent Barrick and Natural Supervisor James Schaefer. He has been incredible to work with. As has been mentioned, this has come about because while the Lopitz expertise has been in trail maintenance and management, primarily in ski trails and mountain bike trails, we take very seriously the agreements that we have already entered into with the Park Board and want to dive deeper into curating and being good stewards of the land which we are programming. And we have also heard from our community that they want more nature-based experiences adjacent to the trailhead. And frankly, we can envision, as can most of the community that we have spoken to, the areas adjacent being this varied landscape, which should be restored. We also are approaching this through a bit of a reparative frame, because the trailhead construction did have impact on the land that surrounds the trailhead, and we want to both recognize that and also mitigate it to the extent that we can. And so this work builds on the volunteer effort that has been ongoing for the past couple of years. We have done some significant work to save the oak trees, which are iconic and greet you as you visit the trailhead. But we also have been engaged in invasive species removal, as has been mentioned, and have been working hard to curate the land around the trailhead in a responsible way and in relationship with our natural management plan. So this will allow us to delve deeper into that work. As has been mentioned multiple times, no work will happen or can happen without the approval of the Site Council. So this is a true joint effort. Also, obviously, the Lopit itself does not have great expertise in this area, so we have partnered now for 2 years with NatureWorks, who is present here, Ryan Atwell and Anna Peterson, who have provided oversight guidance and were helped to create and envision this plan. And we believe that this habitat restoration will not only enrich the natural areas surrounding the trailhead, but also allow us to engage more deeply in our educational opportunities and nature-based learning, which, you know, just a few weeks ago we had before you a resolution to help fund a year-round naturalist presence in Theodore Wirth Park. So we believe deeply that there are going to be opportunities around the trailhead that are married to the opportunities at Eloise Butler, that are married to the bog, that really create a more cohesive natural experience for visitors to Theodore Wirth Park. And of course, we want to create areas of aesthetic beauty, and we want folks to engage at the trailhead just as they would in any other natural area. We also hope that ultimately this will help lead to cultural land management of the area. Allowing us to contract for services and work on the land will allow us to contract with some Indigenous land managers and start to think intentionally about how we might engage that community to help us with the restoration work and envisioning this cultural landscape. And that would include creating a mentorship program and other educational opportunities. So that's a little teaser of what, you know, kind of engaging in this formal donation agreement will allow us to do. But again, we are doing it in complete partnership with environmental stewardship, in complete partnership with the Site Council, and this is work that we take extremely seriously and believe that at the end of this donation agreement, we will be giving back to the Park Board something hopefully more beautiful than it is today, and hopefully one that has offered many more community members an opportunity to engage in the natural landscape in a way that they aren't currently. So I think we're all happy to stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Claire. It looks like Commissioner Menz is turning on his light. You may speak.
I do have a question. Thank you, Claire, for being here. So why a donation agreement and not an MOU?
President Forney, Commissioner Mentz, I believe that the donation agreement allows us, as we just spoke to contract for services directly. And that will allow us to do some of the work, the professional work that this level of restoration requires, that an MOU would not allow us to do as a private entity.
Okay. And I want everybody to know, I think that this is an amazing agreement, and I think that there are really great ways for us to partner with strong groups. What I'm wondering about is how we get to a point where we can do this elsewhere. I also have a question about union work. So I know that there's been questions around how sometimes these agreements can impact what our workers are doing on our parkland.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the efforts that we're making sure that we're in compliance with Local 363 or other unions that might be doing this work that's within this piece of the park?
And I would like to allow Deputy Superintendent Ringgold to respond to that question.
Yes, that would
Billy
be more,
wanted-
yeah, that's not a clear question.
Thank you, Chair Musich and Commissioner Menz. I do think this is an agreement that we hope to replicate. And Interim Executive Director Wilson is correct, is that what's really unique here is that we're trying to replicate other scenarios in the system where, as part of a donation and through essentially a construction permit, another entity is able to do work with contractors on park property under our supervision and at our direction. And so that's a big step. And so you want to have a really firm, solid relationship. They have to take on a certain level of precautions on their side in order to protect us and to protect them from a liability perspective. In terms of the labor question, I think that's an important one. And I think one thing for us to note in this case is our employee resources around natural areas and our work to do natural area work within our system is still growing. And so right now, I think we have 19 managed natural areas within our system. I think that's correct. And so we have staffing allocated, resources allocated to those. We don't currently have staffing in this area dedicated to this type of work. And the hope would be by the end that we'd get to the 10-year time period, we would be staffed to take this on, to take this donation on and be able to manage it with our staffing and our resources. But that is a really important question that we have to think about any of these types of agreements, is not displacing the work that our existing labor groups or our existing staff are doing.
Thank you, Secretary Ringgold. And Chair, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I know that we get these around natural services and natural areas quite a bit, but these questions come up on other spaces in our parkland, such as our fields with specifics and mounds and that type of stuff. And I'm looking for avenues and being clear as a board member as to how those avenues can be applied to other areas of our system so that we can be equitable in how groups like Lopit are utilizing parkland for strong partnership. There are other places where we can apply that within the park system on different kinds of spaces of land. So,
Commissioner Benny.
Thank you, Chair Musich. Thank you for the presentation, and thanks for the work everybody's done. So the space it's 62 acres, but just from the graphic, I have never walked that space, but there is a golf spaces integrated into it, right?
Adjacent to it.
Adjacent, okay. And then is the vision then to restore these and maintain them as kind of a passive use space versus, will there be pressure to, I don't know, add mountain biking or other sorts of trail activities?
Well, I'll let James respond to that to a bit, but no, I mean, it would be passive in that it would allow for environmental education opportunities, nature-based learning opportunities, perhaps a nature trail. We would not Again, this would be in compliance with the master plan and in compliance with the natural areas plan. So we would not be programming it in the way that we do the areas that are established for that type of programming.
Okay, yeah, do you want to, yes, I'd like to hear, if you had something to add?
Adding to that, so this whole 62 acres that is being proposed is identified within our natural areas plan, but not currently one of our managed natural areas within. So ideally, at the end of this 10-year agreement, it would be in a position that we would be able to encompass it within our managed natural areas. So it would be managed by staff after this 10 years with that high bar of the initial restoration phase being done, and then be, I guess, programmed in the kind of the passive recreation way that the rest of our managed natural areas are.
The reason I bring that up, and that's what, that's what the, Deputy Superintendent said as well, that 10 years from now we can take it on potentially, or hopefully. But the reason I say that is I think if it's like a lot of unmanaged natural areas, it's really hard to even walk through spaces like that. So I'm just worried that at some point someone will be like, oh, look at this, it's cleaned up now, we can slap some mountain bike trails through here. So if it's adhering to adopted plans, nothing against mountain bike trails, but it would be also nice for this to be used the word habitat and things like that, to prioritize that type of space as well, especially in such an active park area around the Loppet and Trailhead.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm not seeing any additional lights, but I have a question. So the forested areas that are on the map are heavily forested with oak at this time, mature oak. Is the idea to be planting succession planting in open areas within those woodlands to allow for younger trees to get a toehold? I do know that oaks have more and more pressures every year on them. Oak wilt is getting really bad. There's some new insect that's out to kill them. So just want to make sure that we're thinking not just the next 10 years, because trees tend to live longer than 10 years, but for the foreseeable future, what that woodland will look like. Is that something that you could speak to, James?
Yeah, so there's a couple types of areas. Let me go back to the map here real quick.
Thank you.
So where you see the kind of the S areas, those are savanna. There's a lot of really nice oaks in those areas, but they're also fairly heavily impacted by buckthorn. So the idea here would be largely to be removing the buckthorn and then allowing some of that successional oak to happen, but also those are not heavy canopy areas in the first place. So the intent would not be to get 100% canopy cover on a lot of these. A lot of these will probably emulate a larger tall grass savanna ecosystem, which would long-term probably be managed both with traditional stuff, but also with like fire, which does suppress a lot of woody regeneration. But in the W areas that are a little more intensely wooded, that's absolutely correct. We will be looking at successional tree planting and looking towards restoring them to the ecosystem type that we have identified in the natural areas plan, which would mean helping along a lot of that regeneration, which has been suppressed by the buckthorn.
Okay, great. You got to one of my next questions, which is fire.
Yep.
So when we talked about oak, savanna, and management, I had assumed we'd be using fire. Fire gives me a lot of pause, particularly when we're outsourcing fire to other entities. So would the fire management component of this project be something that we would be managing and coordinating and implementing to ensure that we're following all of the same communication practices that we do when it's something that we're initiating?
Yeah, so after the 10-year period, I think that's something that we would be doing internally as we build up our own fire resources. But during this project, any contractors they hire would have to follow the same procedures we would have when we hire contractors, including their burn qualifications and experience, as well as the fire resources that they're able to bring out on site, the permits they need to obtain, and the notifications they need to give to proper regulatory authorities.
Okay, great. Fire always gives me, I appreciate it. It's very important. It's an incredible tool to have in our toolbox, but I do also worry about things spreading, particularly after we had that flare up at Nokomis that burned down a number of trees and benches a couple of years ago. So I do not see anyone else wanting to talk to you, so thank you so much for the presentation today. And at this time, I will take this resolution to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. And with that, we've completed our business for this evening, and I will declare the Operations and Environment Committee adjourned.
At 7:06. Call to order the Administration and Finance Committee. Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Musich,
Present.
Commissioner Olson,
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer, absent, Co-Chair Thompson,
Here.
Co-Chair Rucker.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I ask somebody to move the approval of the agenda?
I will move our agenda for this evening.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes. Can I ask someone move the approval of the minutes from August 7th, 2024?
I'll move the Administration and Finance Committee meeting minutes of August 7th, 2024.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes. Can I ask someone move the resolution 2024-179?
I would love to move Resolution 2024-179. It's a resolution authorizing the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board staff to apply for grants through the 2024 Hennepin County Youth Activities Grants not to exceed the amount of $300,000 each for Universal Design Playground at Audubon Park and a multi-sport court at Clinton Field Park.
Do we have a presentation for this at all? Perfect.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Chair Rocker, Commissioners. Yep, this is a resolution to authorize staff, MPRB staff to apply for grants through the 2024 Hennepin County Youth Activity Grants up to an amount of $300,000 for, we have two projects for the Universal Design Playground at Audubon Park and the multi-sport court at Clinton Field Park. The Hennepin County Youth Activity Grants is a program focused on increasing youth access to activities by providing grant opportunities for local government units within the Hennepin County. There has been an award since 2009 to 2022 of $5.5 million, with total matching funds from 2009 to 2023 for $10.5 million plus, which has resulted in over $16 million in park improvements that have been completed, and some of them are still in progress. One of these funding opportunities is the Play Area Grant that includes the grants available for sports facilities, playgrounds, and play spaces. The grant is up to $300,000 for each project, and the grant needs to be used for construction or purchasing of play equipment. We've been looking for projects that meet all the requirements, and we have two projects. Also, staff has been advised to have a project per Hennepin County district, so we don't compete with ourselves. So we have selected Audubon Park, which is the planning is going on. The proposal is to have a universal design playground, and the Clinton Field Park, which is in District 3, for a multi-sport court. In District 4, the Minneapolis Public Schools is applying for a gym, so in partnership with parks. So as I mentioned, we have this we're applying with two projects, Audubon Park, the Universal Design Playground, and Clinton Field Park. So Audubon Park, the master plan, East of the River master plan, recommends to have a universal design playground at this location because of the proximity with public transportation. Business is kind of in the heart of Northeast Minneapolis. This would be the second playground, universally designed playground in Minneapolis Park System. And we have already started this project with community engagement and with, we have a design consultant on board. So, but for the park improvements and specifically for the design of the playground. So we thought it would be, the cost of a playground, the surfacing and the play equipment to make it accessible, we would need extra help in the budget to be able to provide all those elements. We are developing the concept plan. We will bring that to the board probably in the next month for approval. And the construction we anticipate will be in the summer next year. We have some, already we have a cost estimate of, and what would be to include this adaptive play equipment, resilient surface. We are trying, we are not touching the existing containers. It's a big playground, it's heavily used by the community, and we are actually repurposing some of the existing play equipment. So with this would be replace some play equipment and add some adaptive play equipment. The other project we are applying for a grant is Clinton Field Park. This concept plan was approved in July, last summer. This is for a multi-sport court, but mainly focused on futsal, which is the soccer. For this one, we have some park dedication funding, but again, this is not, it would help to have additional, so we can provide, fencing and lighting and all the amenities and needs around this futsal court. Also, the construction is anticipated to happen in next year, and we're going to start with the first phase of construction for the park improvements would be this court. You can see some here, some of the renderings, how it will look like at this park. So those are the two projects we're applying for, and I'm open to answer any questions.
Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Chair Rucker. Thank you so much for pointing out that we did our due diligence by coordinating with the Minneapolis Public Schools on their requests as well. I always appreciate seeing that component. It was a big part of our initial agreement with them back when we first started talking about how we could work better together. So it's great to see that that's continuing. With the playground project that has a lot of surfaces that are not natural, are there a lot of trees in the area around that playground, or will trees be part of the project implementation, and will we be able to speak to that if the county commissioners have questions? Because I'm very excited about universal playgrounds, but I also worry about people getting burned or being overheated in areas where those don't have shade.
Chair Rocker, Commissioner Musich, yes, so there are mature trees around that area. Perfect. Since we are not changing the play equipment, so those are not going to be, I'm sorry, not changing the play containers, those trees are not going to be impacted. There's only one portion of the play container that will be expanded, but there are no trees around that. So we are not touching any trees. We are looking to potentially add more trees to the playground or a shaded structure.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that additional information. I appreciate it.
Good. I don't see any other lights, but thank you for your presentation. Very informative. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Since there's no more lights for a discussion, we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes. At 7:15, I adjourn the Administration and Finance Committee.
Nice work. Way to get us out of here quick.
Yes, I can do it.
Bada bing.